Welcome to Out of the Break, a behind-the-scenes look at the most pressing issues in the world of college football as it relates to North Central Florida. Out of the Break is brought to you by Chris Doering Mortgage. Now here's the host of the Sports Fix, Adam Reardon and Chris Doering.
Welcome to week 3 of Out of the Break. As the announcer mentioned, Chris Doering, Adam Reardon, the host of the Sports Fix daily from 10 to noon on AM 850 here in Gainesville, AM 900 in Ocala. It's ESPN Radio. You can catch us online at ESPNGo1.com. And before we take a look ahead at what Florida has against Tennessee and Knoxville this week, let's take a look back at what was a historic weekend in the SEC as two new teams welcome to the conference. And Florida did their best to ruin that coming out party for the Texas A&M Aggies. Turned out to be a historic game for the University of Florida and for Will Muschamp. And I think you look back to our time here at Florida under Coach Spurrier, he points to that Kentucky game in 1993 as the turning point. This could be the turning point in Will Muschamp's era here at the University of Florida as well.
I don't know if you can overstate how big a win this was for Will Muschamp. I think, 5 years down the line, it may just look like another win, but I know, just a few days removed from it, it was absolutely huge. Going on the road, let's be honest, I think you've got a 50-50 split in the fan base. 50% of the fan base says, let's ride with this guy for another 3 years regardless. And then there's the other 50 that says, wait a minute, we expect higher things here at the University of Florida. This is a big win, and sort of silencing, at least for 1 week, that faction of the fan base.
Silence. It was the noise in the system that got Ron Zook fired. A lot of noise in the system after what was a lackluster victory over Bowling Green. People wanting more offense. They wanted the defense to dominate more. But Will Muschamp, you could tell after the game, felt vindicated to some degree. Very happy with the way his team played. Obviously, a huge second half. And we talked about it last week when we previewed the game. Was the cancellation of Texas A&M's Week 1 game against Louisiana Tech an advantage for Texas A&M, or wasn't it an advantage for Florida? I think clearly it was an advantage for Texas A&M. Florida had no clue about what they were going to do offensively, personnel-wise, starting a true freshman in Johnny Manziel. Had no answer for him running the football. But to the credit of this coaching staff, to the credit of Will Muschamp, they went into the locker room. They completely revamped what they were doing. They were able to contain what was in a very explosive offense in the first half and really shut them out on the scoreboard, but really took everything away from them that they were having success with in the first half. And I think that's what this coaching staff does best. In-game adjustments. A lot of credit to their ability to take a look at what was going on, find a solution to it. As they did in the first game against Bowling Green, they corrected some penalty errors that they were having. They corrected some mental errors that they were having and came back and had a better showing in the second half. Again, the same thing against Texas A&M, and they needed it because this was a game that was slipping away rather quickly.
Well, you talk about the X's and O's with the adjustments that they made at halftime. A lot of people say it's not about the X's and O's, but the Jimmies and Joes, and that's what makes this past weekend so impressive to me personally, is that the Jimmies and Joes that you're used to seeing make plays for Florida, they were all going down. They were dropping like flies there at Texas A&M. And to go into halftime, down a score, and realizing you're going to have to change what it is you're doing, and then, oh, by the way, bring in guys that are true freshmen and Morrison to the linebacking core, bringing Taylor in now. You've got guys that are just dropping all over the place on the defensive line. Offensive line, you've had issues throughout this game. To be able to change what you're doing and doing it with your second and sometimes even third string guys, to me, told me a little bit about the University of Florida and the heart of this group to go on the road in that sort of raucous environment and not do it with your first team on offense or defense, to go out there with some backups. The next man up really stepped up for the University of Florida.
Let's talk about some of the specifics that we liked in that ball game specifically. I liked the way Florida started the game. Texas A&M came out, scored on their first possession. Florida went right back down the field methodically with some safe passes for some completions early on to get some confidence going for Jeff Driscoll. I liked the fake field goal call. I thought it showed some aggressiveness. They executed that well, ultimately led to Florida's first touchdown there, which I thought was great. You set the tone with how you come out and put together drives at the beginning of the game and at the first drive of the second half, which they did again. They went right down the field with some success there, ended up settling for a field goal. But I thought those were big in terms of confidence builders for not only the entire team, but for Jeff Driscoll really making his first start on the road. And I thought he looked really good.
I think two things from this football game that I look at and say, these are two things that if you're Florida, you're very, very excited about. One, you cut way down on the penalties. You never really put yourself in a bad spot because of stupid penalties. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a game at home where you have 14 penalties and then you drop it down to 3 or 4, whatever they had at Texas A&M. And then the other thing is Caleb Sturgis. I mean, you talk about the fake field goal. Yeah. What a great benefit it is to have, say, a 4th down at the 35-yard line. And sometimes teams say, well, we can go for it here because we're not sure about our field goal kicker. From the 35-yard line, you're talking about a 52-yard field goal. I mean, that's some routine stuff for Caleb Sturgis. And whenever you can put yourself in a decent position to pick up 3 points here, 3 points there, the margin of victory at Texas A&M last weekend, 3 points. 51-yard field goal.
Basically, you get across midfield and you're getting close to Caleb Sturgis' range. He's continuing to widen that record that he has for field goals in a career over 50 yards. So that is a huge weapon. Let's look at some of the negatives that need to be cleaned up. 8 sacks in this football game. Some of it on protection, a lot of it on Jeff Driscoll. Jeff Driscoll was hit with several blitzes that he wasn't aware of, where he was unprotected. He's got to get sharper with that. Also, held on to the ball way too long. I think there were times that somebody wasn't open. He didn't run immediately and end up taking a sack. He's got to throw that football away or at least try to scramble back to the line of scrimmage. So that's something that they will try to correct in the film study this week and on the practice field. But I thought all in all, Jeff Driscoll took a step towards becoming the quarterback that I think a lot of Gators fans thought they could be.
I think he took a huge step in becoming the University of Florida Gators quarterback. I mean, he is the quarterback now. If we go into the Texas A&M game and there's still people scratching their head on why Jacoby Brissett's not playing, they go into Tennessee this weekend knowing who the starting quarterback and the leader of this football team is, at least on offense.
Big unifying win for Gator Nation. Obviously, I think that the team in the locker room here has believed that they could do this all along. This gave them a little bit more concrete proof what they're capable of. It's all about identity. Nick Saban talks about identity a lot all the time, and I think that Will Muschamp clearly follows in those same footsteps. This team now has an identity. It's grinded out football, great defense, and do whatever it takes to win on offense. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look forward at Florida's next matchup on the road in Knoxville against the University of Tennessee. Stick with us. Does it seem like there's a home refinance program for everyone but you, the responsible homeowner? Hi, Chris Doering here for Chris Doering Mortgage, and I'm excited to announce the Government Initiative Streamlined Refinance Program. With rates at historic lows, it's never been easier to refinance, saving you tens of thousands over the life of the loan. If you've made your current payment on time for the past 12 months, you may be able to refinance with no appraisal, no income verification, and no closing costs. Not sure if you qualify? Give us a call. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Chris Doering Mortgage, a name you know, a name you can trust. Welcome back to the second half of Out of the Break. Time to take a look forward. A little coolness in the air, signs of fall. That kind of makes me reminiscent of some of these games up in Knoxville over the years, and I know Florida now has to turn their attention from what was a great win in Texas A&M to a tough, challenging task of taking on an improved Tennessee ball club. This is the first time since 2007 both teams have come in ranked and undefeated at this point in the season, which when I was in school, it was all about the SEC East being decided by this football game in September. So a little throwback to the days of old.
No, this is a throwback to days of old. I'll be honest, if before the season started, you would have handed me a schedule and said, College game day is going to be in Knoxville for Tennessee and Florida, I'd have told you were nuts for a bunch of different reasons.
CBS changed up their coverage schedule. They've always had the Florida-Tennessee game. They elected to take Alabama and Arkansas. Probably not a good move in hindsight.
I think, 6 months ago, it probably seemed like a good idea for CBS.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so now you're going to have to watch that game on CBS. But you're right, man. When you think about the SEC East, I mean, growing up for me, you knew that game between Florida and Tennessee was going to be a major factor in who represented the East in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. And right now, I mean, obviously Georgia's a big player, South Carolina's a big player, but this game certainly means a whole lot, and you got two ranked opponents taking each other on. And right now, Tennessee, as impressed as I was with Florida last week, sort of stepping up, I am more impressed right now with where Tennessee is versus where my brain told me they were going to be at the beginning of this season. To me, they look like an absolutely different team now that Tyler Bray's there. They obviously have Justin Hunter back. They have the emergence of a brand new wide receiver. They are playing great football right now in Tennessee.
Maybe just in general, a little shift back to some of the stuff we saw in terms of the power in the conference. Arkansas probably not where everybody expected them to be. You got Alabama and LSU at the top of the West. Auburn certainly down over there on that side. But you look, as you mentioned, you got Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee now. So some competitiveness in this division that we haven't seen in a long time. Before we take a look at the personnel of Tennessee and what they do, it's all about Florida. You mentioned the injuries in the first part of the show here today. Some guys that Florida will be missing for sure, and some guys that are going to have to step up, some nagging injuries to a few other guys. And this is something that I think Missouri and Texas A&M are not used to. That's playing a tough game and then having to come back and turn the page to another tough game. Florida will be down Jelani Jenkins for sure, and possibly a few other guys.
Cody Riggs is going to definitely be out as well. Another one of the members of that very deep defensive backfield. So you
get
tend
Pop
not to,
Saunders back.
Yeah,
too,
you get Pop
nice.
Saunders. So I mean, that's a little trade-off there. But that's a deep, talented group, the defensive backfield. So that's to me not a huge loss. But Jelani Jenkins, when Jenkins comes out, you put in a true freshman. And you go to Tennessee. Granted, Texas A&M's a great road trip and probably a pretty decent test. You're going to start in Tennessee. The fortunate thing for Florida and the fact that they may be thin at the linebacking core is this isn't the Tennessee of the 90s, where they are a pounded, physical running football team. So, I think that you almost get guarded from that a little bit. But you still don't want to start too many true freshmen in a football game inside the SEC, especially on the road.
The difference in the football game last year between Florida and Tennessee was the domination on the line of scrimmage. Florida was far too quick, far too athletic on the defensive front, completely threw Tennessee for a loop. They were unable to do much. Obviously, Justin Hunter goes down early in that ball game, so that did not help. But I think that's the key to the ball game this week. You mentioned Tennessee doesn't have that same kind of power downhill running attack that we're used to seeing from them. They do have a couple good running backs in Rajon Neal and Marlon Lane. I think Florida has got to make Tennessee one-dimensional. Go ahead and stop that run, even though it's not as impressive as what we once saw. The key in this series has always been the team that rushes for more yards ends up winning for whatever reason, whatever that's worth. I think that'll hold true, but I think Florida has got to make Tennessee one-dimensional and then pin the ears back and go get Tyler Bray.
I mean, into the second half of this football game, or last week's football game, I thought that Florida would easily outrush Tennessee. Mike Gillislee reportedly practiced yesterday.
I find that hard to believe that he's going to be 100% based upon what we saw from that groin during the ball game.
Unfortunately, when a guy reaches for that groin and is limping very noticeably, when a coach comes out and says, hey, he practiced, I'm sorry. I'm from the new school of sports fans. I don't necessarily believe everything a coach tells you.
Don't think he was going through every drill that they were having, for sure.
If Mike Gillislee's not healthy and not ready to go, there is a significant drop-off between number one and everybody else at the running back spot. Now, is it because Mack Brown hasn't gotten his opportunity? Is it because Matt Jones is a true freshman? Maybe. But I'll tell you this, that even last year when Gillislee was the backup to the two speedsters, you saw something in him that I haven't seen from Mack Brown or Matt Jones yet. So if he can't be 100%, that certainly hurts Florida's running game.
I think it certainly hurts Florida's running game. Gillislee leading the SEC in rushing at this point in time after 2 seasons, so that's 2 games. So that's a big loss if he's not able to go or even not 100%. But as we've talked about, Florida's done a good job of having that next guy step up and produce. We'll see if they can do that. Defensively, you talked about the weapons at wide receiver for the Tennessee Vols. Justin Hunter back from that ACL injury he suffered in the swamp last year. Obviously, Cordero Patterson, the newcomer here, has certainly exploded on the scene. But I think the positive thing is, if you look about where the deepest parts and where the most talented parts of the team are, it's in the secondary. I was very pleased with what I saw with the way the defensive backs played the ball against Texas A&M. Matt Elam down there late, made a play on the ball, got his head around, able to knock it free from the wide receiver's hands in the end zone. We saw it again on the other side of the field with another one of the defensive backs making a play. So I think that these guys certainly can match what Tennessee's going to bring at the skill positions outside. And I think that that's going to be the difference is if you're able to lock those guys up, you don't have to blitz as much. You feel comfortable with being able to have your front get pressure on that offensive line. And I like the matchup for Florida defensively against what Tennessee brings.
I don't think Florida is deficient in talent in the defensive backfield, but I'm a guy who loves Tyler Bray, and I think that he is one of, if not the best quarterback in the SEC. Don't be surprised for all the love for Tyler Wilson before the season started. Aaron Murray gets a lot of love. When the NFL draft goes on and the first quarterback taken out of the SEC and they say Tyler Bray, don't be shocked at that. I certainly won't be. And when you've got a quarterback that good in college football, they can help you win football games, big football games, especially at home against a rival type opponent.
To me, he's Peyton Manning. Not Peyton Manning necessarily in the way he plays, but Peyton Manning in terms of what he means to his ball club. When he went out last year with that injury, Tennessee completely fell apart, much like the Indianapolis Colts did without Peyton Manning. With him back, they are a totally different team. The big statistic to this point in time, yet to throw an interception. His decision-making is better. He's throwing with more accuracy, and I think that's why, obviously, the Tennessee offense is much improved. We'll see how this pans out. I do like Florida to win in this football game. I think it's going to be another close one. It's going to be another grinded out type ball game. But as Will Muschamp said, that is our identity. Selection for you? Not the same selection as that?
I think Tennessee, because their quarterback is better, gets better quarterback play than Texas A&M. Being this game is going to be on the road for Florida, I like Tennessee in this game. In another very close one, sweat it out, 3-point ball game here or there. Remember, Florida still does have a great kicker, so if it is a field goal type football game, you got to like Caleb Sturgis. I just like the advantages right now that Tennessee has when you factor in the injuries and the home field advantage and all the things going right now. Tennessee in a tight one.
I've seen some heartbreakers in terms of games coming down to field goal kickers in Knoxville over the years. Hopefully, if it does come down to that, Florida is the better suited one to win that football game this weekend. We'll check back with you next week. Thanks for joining us on Out of the Break. It was here in this end zone where I caught my SEC record-breaking touchdown. But all of those touchdowns would not have been possible if it weren't for great teammates working together for one goal. The same is true when it comes to purchasing a home. At Chris Doering Mortgage, our experienced and knowledgeable team can handle all types of loans. And like football, timing is everything. With rates at historic lows and prices from a decade ago, now is the time to buy. Call us today to put my all-star team to work for you. Chris Doering Mortgage, a name you know, a name you can trust.